All right, we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. Hello, hello. I'm already seeing lots of comments in the chat. So excited to have Tony with me here today. I'm really blessed and grateful to actually have this great timing to pick your brain and get us ready to make the most out of our journeys as writers who are actively using Medium or thinking of starting on Medium. So thank you for being here, Tony.
Oh, I mean, you're welcome, of course. I think it's my third time here, right? I just think it's really important. When I came on board, I thought it was really important to get more conversation going between us and the
Yeah.
authors. And can we give better guidance and can we hear more about what is important to all of you? And so I feel like equally blessed that there are people like you in the community who are, helping to make those conversations, make them happen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. No, I mean, I'm very grateful for you being here, and I'm sure our community members are too. So if you're joining us live, leave a comment, let us know where you're joining from so we know that the audio and video are fine. And yeah, apart from that, Tony, it's been about 4 months since you joined as CEO, almost 5, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have any experiences? Did you learn anything? Did anything surprise you that you want to share with us?
I honestly, I'm not sure it's obvious from the outside yet, but I'm surprised how well it went. I think there was a ton to do, and that was obvious from day one. And a lot of that was kind of internally, like getting people aligned with where I wanted to go, which was about focusing on a couple of things that we're really good at. And, like you never know. Like you come into a situation, you never know. I think for me, kind of one of the challenges on day one is I didn't know the people here. Like I know Medium's founder Ev really well. I know our VP of content Scott Lamb really well because he had been essentially my boss for the work that I had done as a partner. But other than that, there's like not a lot of people, and so there's this period of trust building, I guess, on both sides, and uh, I don't know. I mean, imagine yourself walking into like a new school or something. It's like I had all of that anxiety of, are they going to buy what buy the
Yeah.
direction I'm trying to take the company? And so, I think a couple weeks ago, we had a company offsite. We got the whole company together at a place in upstate New York, and it was the first time a lot of us had ever met each other, and certainly the first time I'd met people. And I've been on meetings with them, but never really face to face. And there was just so much energy and passion for getting this right and making Medium a really special place, or more special than it already is. So I I guess maybe I just the surprise was that it's working, which like I guess I planned for it to work, but I also I have all of the normal anxieties that I
Yeah,
think a
sure.
normal person would have. Yeah.
Well, thanks for
Wait,
sharing that.
I'm reading the comments. We gotta get this. Tony is a really good person. Yeah, that's it. Thank you,
um,
Cloud9 Music. um
Tony, you actually made my job for this interview really simple by
uh,
publishing a very interesting article just recently, Boosting the Boost, which I think led to a huge conversation and lots of questions and opinions being shared. And in that article, you refer a lot to changes you are already making and you'd like to get established, I assume, in the near future. And I think this is actually a great point to just discuss here, because a lot of the stuff that you mentioned there is very interesting to writers. One thing you talk about is the role of publications, which has been a huge
mm,
discussion, I would say,
hmm
especially this year, because there's been a lot of questions around, do publications still matter? Are publications going to be gone very soon? And you made a very clear point of publications being a vital part of the Medium experience, and that you actually want to emphasize them and give them more importance in the future. Do you want to share a bit more on your thoughts and the direction that you'd like to, head in the upcoming months?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about publications, it's really important to talk about not just big publications. Medium's not going to break apart into a site that's dominated by 5 large publications, because the thing that we can't do ourselves, and it is be the tastemakers. Essentially our job, on the subscription side, is to bring the absolute best articles to people. And best means well written, it means relevant, and it means correct, right? And sometimes, I guess I should probably just start with the caveat. If I say something that doesn't make sense to the type of writing that you do, just ignore it, right? There's no such thing as a poem that's correct, right? But there's a lot on Medium where that correctness and relevance matters a lot. Like our biggest publication is towards data science, right? So if you're a data scientist, you don't want to read just any data science article. You want to read the ones that are most impactful to you, to your career, that they teach you something about, the way the world is going. And so in the past, when we've done our recommendations, when we've done them with internal curators, we have the problem of our internal curators are generalists. They're not subject matter experts. And when we've done them with algorithms, we're really only relying on engagement signals. So essentially, what gets clicked on the most, what gets read the most, which you think means it's good, but not always. And so we really want to, in service of having the highest quality subscription for people, we really want to engage. I don't know how this will land, but the tastemakers, to have some other people that understand their space. And I think there's this other thing too, is like having the publications engaged gives a stepping stone to people. It's like if you're unknown, you have someone to go to, right? And it's not us. Like we don't want to be the gatekeepers. And I think if we have enough of these publications, there'll be a home for everyone.
I mean, I loved reading that, because for me, publications have always been a very important part of my experience as a writer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have like 5 articles out of like almost 600 that I've not published in a publication. So it also helps because you get feedback. It's that cycle, you get into a community. But if we look at the fact that everyone can publish or create a publication, how do you see this developing? Like, if publications should play an important role, is there going to be any sort of guidelines management, any kind of controlling or highlighting publications that are more serious, better managed than others? You mentioned you don't want to have a few huge pubs. You do want people to be able to create their own publications and to build these communities within Medium. But how can that look like from a quality point of view? Because for a lot of pub owners right now, the publication is one of many more side projects. So they naturally don't even have the time to have a strict editing process or quality control.
Yeah, I think the side projects are still going to work. Like it doesn't need to be a full-time job to be a kind of an excellent curator of a small batch of really important articles in a topic that you care about. I would start with, I think the confusion that I think we've all had about the role of publications is that we've never had publications aligned with the goal of the company. So I mean, if the goal of the company is quality, we just never had the right systems or incentives in place. And so that's why you end up with a lot of publications that are focused on volume instead of quality. And I think that's because that's obviously not aligned. There's always been this fear, like our publication is going to go away. Well, the first thing is we have to get some alignment there. And so from our perspective, the publications that have there's going to be, this is still in development a little bit, but the things that we can do to get a publication aligned with us on quality are to, first of all, pay primarily on whether or not they're finding and sourcing the great articles, not the most number of articles, but the great articles. And then that's probably like the number one. And then the number two is affinity. If you're starting a publication that people want to read every day, or even just read once a week, that's a real signal of quality. If you're starting a publication that publishes a lot and most people don't read any of it, or you're publishing a lot and they're like clicking the don't show me any more like this button every third article, I think that's a sign you're not serving your readers as well as you could. So the details of that are all kind of to be worked out. And I think my experience is you never set the rules once and walk away. Like, you're always rebalancing them. And so, the goal is to reward publications that are focused on quality, and we've just never done that before.
Yeah. I don't know if you already have an answer to that, but one question that's been coming up a lot is when you talk about paying publications and editors, does that mean we can experience, or we might experience, a total shift of how the partner program is going to look like on the creator side? Because obviously that money needs to come from somewhere. And if we want to incentivize everyone to kind of upgrade the quality level on the platform, editors will, or publication owners and editors will play a significant role. So how is that distribution going to look like?
Yeah, what it looks like to us right now is that it won't come out of author earnings. I think, sometimes this question of like, will our earnings go down, I think is really reasonable, because a lot of times earnings do go down. It might go up across the site, but every month there's a huge number of authors that it went down for. And it's like, if it went down for you, that money went somewhere, usually to some other author. And that, I think that's the nature of publishing. It's popularity changes, interests change pretty regularly, and it is really a hits business. So the number one change I would expect for authors is that it'll shift more to being hits driven. Like, if you can generate a hit, it's going to be easier to generate a hit, and you're going to get paid more for it. But also probably less, that means less money for the things that don't hit. I think that is actually more in line with the rest of publishing. Even if you go to the New York Times, each article doesn't get the same number of views. On a given day, one breaks out and 10 get some traction, and then the rest are sort of invisible. Probably, I think for the best writers, or the writers that are like interested in really generating their best stuff here, that'll look like an increase in pay, right? And that, I think that'll probably be really healthy. I think, the thing too is like, I would look at it as the publications are doing you a service as an author. Like, they're helping to onboard you, they're helping to give you some credibility. Sometimes they're bringing you to an audience, and I think they'll be part of promoting your article, and certainly part of like trying to help find the articles that are going to get the biggest boost. Yeah.
I mean, in my experience, that's not too different from the way it or the majority of the time it was already over the last few years. So that's probably not like significant shock for most people here. But one thing is really interesting about what you said about being hit driven. That's also what you mentioned in the article, the boosting part. You mentioned that driving external traffic will benefit writers and the stories they send traffic to, which is so fair and natural. I believe that that's happening everywhere, but it's kind of wasn't the case on Medium so far. At least that was my experience. Now, when that comes into place, that raises two interesting questions for two different groups of people. So the first one is, are there any best practices, ideas that you want to share on how to do that? I mean, obviously, what established writers can do is just send traffic to their links. But how does that look like for a new writer? Like when there is an expectation of driving traffic makes sense and is necessary, do new writers still have a chance to get those hits? Because as far as I remember, over the last couple of months, Medium tried a lot to encourage new voices and new writers and help them, step in and build their audiences, even if they were brand new. So when we talk about external traffic and someone who is maybe brand new in the online world, they don't have a list yet, they are not yet too established on other platforms, how could the experience look like for them?
I still encourage new writers. I mean, this is like this is something great about expressing ourselves, right? And that originally, that's what, the first sort of value of Medium was, this place where anyone could come and express themselves. And, a lot of times you learn by writing. So like we say, like we're in the business of deepening people's understanding. That's the authors too. How much do you learn when you cover a topic or, write a piece? So, it's like when we're talking about like writing a hit, it like that is something that is a skill that you work up to. And if your first article isn't a hit, that's not a bad sign at all. And one of the things I like about people in the community like you and who work with a lot of beginner writers, it seems like, is that you help like lay that path. So the things that I do when I write, right, because I was a publisher and writer here, long before I joined, is whatever my own audience that I have gathered over the years, I use that. But most of the traffic comes from other places. Like most of the traffic comes from posting to Reddit, or a lot of my articles do well on Hacker News, right? And so you have places that you can share your article that will kind of give you a lot of external traffic. And I noticed in some of the comments on my piece that people were really like worried that it was going to be the only thing that we looked at. I think these signals are always in balance, right? And the number one thing that I want to get away from is like we were in the interest of like fairness and democratizing access to audience. We had started trying to give distribution to articles that had zero external traffic. And I actually think that not in every case, but in a lot of cases, that's a negative signal about the quality of the piece. Like if you wrote something that you don't have anyone in your life you want to share it with, why would we be the ones sharing it for you, right? And I mean, we could talk about how scary it is to put yourself out there and all of the edge cases where it's just not possible for you to share something outside of with your actual network. But the bulk of Medium is stuff that you absolutely could share, right? If you're writing about your professional life, right? Like the programming, the technical, the design, the entrepreneurship. If you write something and you don't have a single coworker that you think would respect it, then we shouldn't be the ones promoting that and boosting that, right?
That's such an interesting perspective. I never thought of it that way, but it makes so much sense. And when I reflect on my own journey, I could have shared even my first articles. I guess I wouldn't have done it back then because I wasn't proud of it, because I didn't put enough effort into it, because I didn't know if anyone would read it. But I guess it's just fair to reward those who do take that, to go that extra mile of getting feedback from someone, going into communities saying, hey, this is, I'm still in the beginning. Can you, share your thoughts? What could I do differently? Or,
Right.
not just publishing something you've written in an hour, but actually spending or putting more thought into your work, so that you can at least say, hey, I know this isn't great yet, but I gave my best, and I'm scared, but I'm putting myself out there.
Right.
That's
So,
a nice perspective.
An easy step is put down this idea of this thing that you're not confident in, you haven't, that that it'll be a hit, right? Like, you just want to get some eyes on it. And that's I think the beauty of us finally enabling all the publications here. So a lot of the publications here are very beginner focused, right? And so I think in that case, when you're just getting started, it's a matter of finding one of these beginner pubs, and they'll put eyes on it. They'll give you feedback, and not just them, but the authors there. So these paths will still exist, but they won't exist for people that aren't going to take any initiative at all.
Mm-hmm. One more thing you mentioned, which for me actually closely connects to what we just talked about, is that you will try to push back on bad behavior in terms of trying to hack the system. This is obviously something we've been seeing a lot over the last probably years, of people trying to hack the system by getting clicks, getting claps that are not genuine, that aren't driven by readers, but by writers, or even, there are even like gigs on different places where you can buy claps and all that stuff.
You can buy followers.
I think you can buy anything
Yeah.
at this point on any platform, but what kind of challenge does that bring up? Like, you do want to drive, or you want to have, or you want people who drive external traffic to have an advantage. But at the same time, there's a fine line between bad behavior. Like, for example, I can easily drive at least a couple of hundred clicks to an article as soon as it's live, just by sending out an email. And in each email, I could tell my audience, hey, if you like this, please, clap for it, leave a comment. It's going to help me reach more readers. Is that bad behavior? Is that something writers should be careful about because it's overly promotional? It's whatever, or is that something you encourage? Like, shall we tell our readers, our existing audience, hey, please, if you like the article, show some engagement, because that's going to help me reach more people and continue doing what I love doing? What's the line there? Because I think from your perspective, it's not too easy to figure out where the bad behavior starts, and what you want to punish and what you want to reward.
The word punish is always funny. We're not no one came to work today to punish anyone. So let me just start first of all, we haven't actually made any changes. I just wanted to put it in the water that something is off, and we're going, like, there's places where we're going to need to. And I'll tell you the motivation, that kind of the thing that really put this on my radar is we have in our partner program right now a requirement that you have 100 followers. And I'm not, we're not 100% confident that this is the right thing to do, but it's there so that the partner program is for people that have demonstrated some level that of interest, like that an audience wants to read them, right? Because the partner program is for, for promoting, boosting articles that people want to read. And so we don't need articles in it that nobody wants to read. There's a little bit of a barrier, and I think inspired a little bit by YouTube, which has an incredibly high bar for monetization. I think it's like you can buy the followers on YouTube, but to get the viewership, like what is it, 1,000 hours or whatever, is like a lot to get there. So it's like, to us, this is a relatively minor barrier. But the point is to demonstrate that people are interested in. Do we say that that's the point? I mean, we sort of maybe incorrectly just felt like, well, that's assumed. And so I also assume that people will, when there's money on the line, people will push the boundaries, try to game the system. I mean, certainly I've done that on other platforms. I know what it is to be like hungry to get attention for something you want to get out into the world. But what I thought was really trippy is that when I joined, I had people telling me to my face, like, here I am, I'm the new CEO of Medium. I had them telling me to my face that they were hacking that 100 follower list, and they didn't see why that wasn't okay. And to me, this was shocking, because I always thought everyone who's in these gray areas knows it's gray and would have the sense to stay in the shadows with it, right? And that they would tell it to my face. I was like, oh, something is way off. Like, we have not even raised the possibility that this behavior might be frowned on, right? And so that scared me, because when people are hacking the system like this, they're taking money away from authors who are much more deserving. Like, none of us should be happy about that. So that's the specific one that's most on my radar. If they aren't 100 authentic followers, if you got them in exchange for following them back, that doesn't demonstrate that you have an audience. If you bought them, that definitely doesn't demonstrate that you have an audience. I mean, just think about the logic of it. If we wanted you to buy followers, we would just charge you.
Like, buy them from us, yeah.
Right? It's like
buy a banner, yeah.
Right. So that's where I was on that. I think absolutely, like, you should, like, we want you to cross promote your articles, and if you're building a bot that makes it look like you're getting traffic, yeah, that's not good faith behavior. If you're sharing it to your audience, yeah, that is good faith behavior. But I think a lot of these things, like the things that we're starting to put our eye on, are so obviously bad faith behavior to anyone that thinks about it, that if you're like, well, like the things that you raised are like not what we're looking at.
I mean, there's another, let's call it, elephant in the room that a lot of people are probably wondering about, that I have seen you talk a lot about on Twitter. We have seen articles on Medium being raised by the team, AI writing tools and everything that comes with our ability as writers to make use of them, or the possibility of having to compete with them. I mean, you shared a lot of thoughts, which was really interesting. Scott shared a great article talking about what the Medium team is thinking about AI tools. I have seen Justin Cox from the Writing Cooperative already having a paragraph in his publication guidelines saying, if you have used generative AI, disclose it. Yeah, tell us that you've generated this article or parts of it using the tool. What are some thoughts, yours or the team's, that you want to share as we move into 2023, where these tools are probably going to develop and improve even faster, so we possibly can't or shouldn't ignore them anymore, or at least we should be aware of their existence?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to look at it both ways. In what way is it kind of a danger that needs to be managed and controlled, and what way is it an opportunity? Um, I think some of the opportunities are pretty clear, like, and are clearly good. Like I think people are tired of unsplash images for cover images, right? And to have AI generated art is actually a really fun and interesting way that makes it much more accessible for anyone to create truly original cover images, which end up being a big part of um, articles on Medium. And like we've done enough work there to know that we could afford it. There's like a little bit of a cost on the back end, but we could afford to have that as a feature, and I think that'd be kind of unambiguously cool. If you don't think that, like, let me know. But like our that's where we would lean. I know also for writing that like a little bit of AI support can be um, good to get through writer's block, or like to kind of like get you started. And I wouldn't be surprised if we put AI support into the our editor. Like it's not for the first half of the year, but it's on our eye, sort of on our mind that at one point Medium had far and away the best writing editor on the entire internet. And it might be time to reinvent it in a way that, like does that again. And so obviously AI writing tools would be part of that. The thing where I'm more on the fence is like just fully generated AI writing. You referenced this experiment I did where I did a new version of a post I'd put up that was completely AI generated. I gave it a couple of prompts and generated a few thousand words on a topic. It was how to run a company offsite. And I didn't think that the writing was bad, but I also didn't think it was great. And right now that's my sense of AI writing is it might be good enough to get SEO traffic, but is it good enough to be worthy of the subscription that we sell? Like, do our subscribers want to read that? Like, I've never had someone send me an AI written piece and say, like, I love this, right? They've said this is surprisingly good, but they never said that they loved it, right? And I think one of the things that's wrong about them is that they're inauthentic, right? Like a lot of what makes great writing is the authenticity behind it. People talk about Medium being a great home for personal essay, right? Do you want to read a personal essay from an AI bot? I think knowing there's a human behind the writing creates all this like extra meaning. I think that's even true for poetry. Like, I bet you an AI bot could make interesting poems, but it won't have lived an interesting life. So that there's no interesting life behind that poetry. Yeah. So this is like the problem is we can't identify it. The identification tools are very, very weak. And so, I mean, this kind of gets back to the partner program. Are we in partnership together, or are we in like conflict with each other, right? Like, is this a partnership where we trust each other, or a partnership where there's no trust? And I think Justin and his publication, I think they have a high degree of trust there, and that's why his decision he wants that labeled. His decision around it, I think, is made in partnership with those authors, and that they're all like basically in a group, like that you can do it on the honor system. For us, across a platform as big as we are, the honor system does not work perfectly. There's a lot that can be done that way, but I think I think it's going to be tricky. And I mean, hopefully by us enabling more publications, the publications will kind of be this added layer of making sure that this added layer of quality in there. And
And I mean, another question that I believe this raises is the whole quality versus quantity conversation, because AI obviously makes it like stupidly easy to hack the system if the system is rewarding quantity. if the system is rewarding engagement, and it is actually rewarding authors for sharing their work, which indicates that we need to write something that is worth sharing, that probably creates a system that sustains itself. But I guess this is probably interesting overall. Like when you talk to writers here listening to this, wondering, how can I use Medium to raise my voice, to attract an audience, to share my message? Should they be concerned about publishing as many articles as they possibly can in as many iterations as they can, or should they put more thought into an article and assume that higher quality thoughtful writing is going to be rewarded in a different way? And I totally see that the answer is going to be different for different topics that we might write, or different genres even. But is there anything on that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, this is a subtlety. This is why I come to talk to you, because I think it needs to be taught in a subtle way, and I think that you will end up doing that, which is, what's the point of volume, right? We're going to get rid of one of the points of volume. I think one thing that people have tried to do at Medium is grind out a living with high volume posts where each post makes a few dollars, right? I think that's going away. Like, if you want to make a living, you have to be able to produce stuff that is we're going to raise the bar, and you're going to need to clear that bar in order to make a living here. But that doesn't mean that volume isn't important. I mean, volume is like part of people's writing process, right? I mean, to use a personal example, right? Like, I sort of famously had this like mega hit about how to set up your iPhone, which is like, you would think is a niche topic, but I managed to write 75,000 words on it. And I didn't just write that out of the blue. I think I wrote 6 or 7 partial pieces of that leading up to it. But they weren't, and those pieces were okay. They got some traction. They covered things that people wanted to hear, but I was working out an idea. And I think that that's actually really common, that people are working out ideas through their writing. That's a place where volume helps. Write it, get a little bit of feedback, come back with a different angle, come back with an addition, and those pieces come together. So a lot of the things this is a surprising thing, I guess, to me about being CEO, is a lot of the things it's so hard to get nuance across for me, right? And so a lot of times I'll say something and it'll be greatly simplified. And so I would never want to say, don't write a lot, because that's so important to just the process of being a writer. But we're going to pay for quality over quantity. We're going to reward, not just pay in money, but pay in distribution. That is our goal, is to create incentives where we are boosting for quality, not for quantity.
And this kind of flows into one of the last questions, or actually kind of my thoughts. I believe, summing all of that up, everything we talked about, and the rise of AI, the rise of spammy behavior, spammy content, maybe even false intentions that are leading content creation. I believe standing out, attracting readers, attracting an audience, possibly on every platform, is going to be more about creating engaging content, but also being engaged, not just attracting numbers, but building a sense of community and belonging. And this will look different for different types of writing and different types of writers. Obviously, someone who is creating very technical stories is going to create a different sort of community and belonging than someone who is writing to, I don't know, first-time moms and the struggles they are facing. There's going to be different layers of emotions there. But that is my sense of what the future, not just in long form writing, but in general. I believe that's what people will look for. That's what is lacking in AI, and that's why we will probably feel more attracted to a fewer number of creators or writers who go a bit deeper instead of just being shallow and surface level. You, like, before we went live, you mentioned that there are a few things you want to share. My question on that is there, do you think Medium encourages that, goal of building community, building a sense of belonging to the writer's mission or vision, whatever they are writing about? How can writers make use of that? I mean, you have email features now. I feel like Medium is very actively trying to add features that make it easier to connect with the audience. And there's probably still a way to go in order to make it even more engaging and encouraging that conversation. What is your take on that?
I mean, I think community is almost the most important part for a lot of writers, right? It's not just how many people see your piece, but how many people you know. And so I used to have the way I used to experience this is I would be writing on Quora and on Medium, and I would never have like my numbers on Quora were theoretically higher, but I had never had the experience of someone I knew saying that they'd read something on Quora. Not even someone I knew online. It's like you'd get more views on Quora, but somehow none of it ever got shared to social media, right? And I like, are these fake numbers? Or does it matter? But it's like what mattered to me is it's felt like important people were, people who were important to me at least, were reading what I was writing on Medium. And so I would be out and about. I'd run into a college friend and they're like, oh, I read this thing of yours, right? And that, I think that mattered more to me, and I think to a lot of writers who are really, wanting to make impact and connection, with their readers. So what we have already is a piece of that. Email, definitely building an email list, and on Medium, which is possible now, importing a mailing list is something that I've done, and I'd also encourage. Like, that is a way to like really make sure that your true fans, hear from you. I think publications are a great source of community. I think if we do what we're setting out to do here, be much stronger feeling of community there. Yeah, that's a piece of it for sure.
I have one final question, and then if we still have a few minutes, we can take a look at the comments. So if you're watching live and there's anything you feel like we didn't address yet that you want us to address, leave a comment so we can take a look in a few minutes. But to get back to writing and the experience of writers, I mean, we talked about this I think last time we talked to each other when we've been on the panel with other writers about how scary it can be to actually get started and publish something you've created yourself. I mean, you mentioned that your experience was different, but I guess for the majority probably watching this, putting themselves out there, publishing something might still feel very scary. Medium might, feel like a huge thing they are doing. They might have not figured out how the platform works yet. They might not know what publications are really here for, how tags work. There are a lot of layers, a lot of stuff to learn when you're still new. If you think of these people who are just about to start their journey, maybe people who've been readers for years and who now, are getting into that idea of, hey, I actually have something to share too. What is something you'd like to share with them moving forward in terms of, encouraging them to take that step, or just sharing, what getting out there could mean for them in terms of finally sharing a message and connecting with others who might have been thinking the same, or people who might have been actively looking for a solution that you have based on your experiences in life?
Um, there's something special about Medium that we probably don't share enough, which is we're in the business of like promoting articles, not authors. And I think, you know, a fairly scary thing uh, for new authors, which has actually come up in this call, is like, if I'm not already established, will anyone see, right? And for us, like some of our biggest hits, you know, some of the things that we've been most proud to share have come from people that didn't have an audience already, but had something special to say. And so there's sort of a word of mouth saying that I'd heard that from the Moth storytelling world. So the Moth is the organization that runs storytelling circuits. These are all live, and the people that are active on those circuits, there's definitely this world of experts who are really good at it. But they have the saying that every person has one good story. And because it's the story you've been telling to everyone, you know, your whole life, right? It's the story you've been practicing. It's the story you tell most commonly. That is like your top story. But there's a second half to what they say, which is you know, everybody has one good story. If you have two good stories, then you're a storyteller. And don't take that exactly literally, but it's that if you're able to manufacture a second story, to find a way to tell a story that isn't the one that you've already been rehearsing your whole life, then that's when you start learning the skills of being a writer. Um, how does it work in practice? I mean, I think back to 2003, which is when I first wrote my first blog. I don't remember what it was, but I remember that there was a couple of very short ones, like 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs. And then I wrote one that I like and I still like. And it was about myself and observation about myself. And I still think about it, right? And so, you know, that I think tells this other story that a lot of teachers in the community talk about, which is in order to become a writer, you have to write. You have to just get out there and practice and
Mm.
find your voice, and that can take a while. Um, and you know, there's some safety in anonymity, right? Like we're not, you know, when that's the flip side of us talking about optimizing for hits is the stuff that you write that's practice writing. Very few people are going to see that. You know, take that to a beginner writer community, share it with them, get feedback. You know, make sure 10 people see it, and then come back with something. You know, something new.
Yeah, that's great. This is actually something I share a lot. Like when people tell me they are so scared of publishing that first piece because, you know, what if somebody sees it? And it's actually so contradictory because I mean you publish it because you want people to see it, but on the other side, it's this funny thing that the likelihood of your first story being seen by a lot of people is naturally so low because you probably have no idea what you're doing. You have not written with the intention or with the knowledge of someone who knows how to attract an audience and how to serve an audience. So um, I think this is actually good news. I think this should be encouraging for anyone who is serious about doing this for a long time. Because if you know, this is the beauty of writing, I guess. It's an endless journey. You know, you don't write with the
Yeah,
intention of being done at some point.
right.
If you want to write, you're probably gonna write forever, and you have so many opportunities to get the right story in front of the right people. And Medium obviously is a great tool to help us do that. In my opinion, the most easiest way possible.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I hope this is encouraging for those who've probably still been scared about putting themselves out there.
yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want to add, Tony?
You didn't leave room to like pull the short-term roadmap out of me. Um, we've got features for book authors coming shortly. We've got an upgrade to lists coming shortly. I think I mentioned in my Boosting the Boost post that we want to organize the back catalog. Like we think that counting posts on Medium is a little bit interesting because it's like you want to filter out spam and whatnot. But let's say like top level, we've got 75 million blog posts on Medium. And if we were to organize the best of those, we would have a knowledge base on par with Wikipedia, covering different topics. I think, to my mind, more useful topics. That's a big goal for next year. And that's another way to boost, right? Like write something timeless. And we want to give that sort of writing a long-term boost as well. We have not fully rolled out the level of boosting that we want. That the best stuff is starting to get a bigger boost than it was when I came on board, but I think that's going to get more pronounced shortly. Those are the three things that I'm hearing the most about right now from the team.
Is there anything writers can do, or you encourage writers to do, in terms of building the catalog of evergreen articles? Is that going to be a manual selection? Do you want writers to, I don't know, submit articles on different topics that they believe deserve to be on these lists?
I think we'll do a manual start, and then we'll build a process for adding to it and editing it. I think that's a key thing, is like evergreen pieces are not evergreen forever. Sometimes a better evergreen piece comes along. Sometimes they need additions and whatnot. I think that's not January work. Like that'll, but that definitely is part of it. Like we're a believer in our community. And I think when we're doing something manually, it's because we feel like we have to prototype it. We want to prototype it kind of quickly. But we don't want to be running these things long term, because I think the community is always better at it than we would be.
Cool. I think we already covered a lot of the comments that, at least that I have seen in the chat. Is there anything you saw, Tony, that you want to point out?
Let's see. I think Jonathan Wexler is asking about content moderation, which has been just like a big topic of discussion, not just about Medium. It's like Twitter has put it in the news, right? And I think it goes back to what is the purpose of this company, right? Is we wanted to create a place where everyone can contribute towards deepening each other's understanding of the world. Kind of implied in that is like that the point of Medium is to be constructive. Like we don't want to deepen a misunderstanding of the world, although we know that that's possible on the journey. And so we've taken, I think, a slightly more opinionated take on content moderation than other people have had. Mostly, like there's not a place to be hateful towards other people. There's a place to be thoughtful. If you're going to, there's not a place to put like sort of lazy, uninformed medical information, right? Like do your work, and as a result, I think that we do have a reputation for basically being a place that's helpful. It's going to make you a better person. I mean, I did run a publication here called Better Humans for a long time, right? Like that is pretty much the goal here. And that starts with how we do community or content moderation, like how that there's definitely like trolls will come through, there's hurt feelings, there's nowhere near the level of toxicity that was on Twitter and is now like becoming more mainstream on Twitter. And because of that, I think more people are able to participate, more people with differing views are able to talk to each other. So yeah, that ends up being really important to us. And I think key to how Medium works.
Awesome. Thank you so much for actually going so deep into this. I think this is a conversation a lot of people are having these days. And yeah, I'm seeing a few more questions, but we are running out of time, so we can keep the conversation going in the comments sections. But thank you so much for joining, Tony. This has been great, very insightful. Thanks for sharing everything you've been working on, you've already implemented, and you are planning to implement. I'm working on some stuff too for the next month in order to help writers, especially keep that New Year motivation high for a bit longer than the usual couple of days or weeks. So we hope to create some great resources that will help lots of especially beginners really share their message in a meaningful way and reach the right audience. So thank you for being here and taking the time. Do you have any final words before we close this up?
Oh, I love being here. I mean, my final word is to you. Invite me back. I think this is a really good conversation. We always, I think, get things out into the world that are helpful to writers, and I learn a lot. So, hopefully I see you again soon if you're willing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next round of announcements, updates, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of new stuff to talk about in the upcoming months.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely there will. All right. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone for joining. Bye-bye.